You and Congressman Percy Sandanya were tagged for deliberately and maliciously framing the justices as particularly, justices as beholden to President Rodrigo Duterte. What would you have to say about that? Nagulat ka ba dito?
Well,
good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I mean, first of all, kailangan kong gumising na maaga. I think we have to prepare the 30,000 just in case, God forbid na. But, obviously this is just a frivolous case because I think the only material they were referring to, because I reached out to different ex-justices, there Ascuna, Carpio. I actually even reached out to the Supreme Court and tried to get an interview with them to be fair about this. I had, I think, a tweet or something like that about just the fact that, 13 out of 15 justices by 2022 were appointed by the former president. But I made it absolutely clear, including in my Philippine Daily Inquirer column this week, that just because you're appointed by someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll vote along certain lines. So I was very clear about that. And therefore, in my opinion, what is malicious here, what is being twisted here is my tweet and my interventions on social media and a complete, lack of attention to all of the caveats and context and everything I put there. Not to mention, I've consistently on Twitter and different platforms said, there's no point in attacking the justices, including, progressive justices like Justice Leon. And so all of this are on the record. So actually, I was surprised that they put me there. Kaya suspect ako, baka nilagay lang ako dahil maraming naasar sa mga tore, mga taunting ko. Diba? So that's why I find it very frivolous. But I have high hopes and high confidence in our highest court and our good justices not to bother with and to dispense with these kinds of frivolous petitions. I mean, just to be nice about it, I mean, when I was saying, like, who are these people even filing this? I mean, like, it's a gallery of rogues.
Tatanungin ko nga
It's a
sana,
gallery of rogues. Yung isa, family name pa lang. Parang yung isa naman, parang, I mean, you just Google, I don't know kung may Wikipedia page yung mga tao na yun, just Google their background. And then you also had people from this, like, banned party list there. Like, I think that speaks for itself about the credibility of this whole process and all of that.
But you haven't been particularly safe with your commentaries on social media, right? Ang dami mo ring mga statements there.
I have statements on West Philippine Sea. I have statements on other things, but as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, while I've expressed my dissatisfaction with its implications, and I've interviewed people who have disagreed with its merit, these are legal luminaries. At the end of the day, I think I was very clear that this is not about attacking the integrity of the institution, because at the end of the day, that undermines faith in our own democracy. And I also find it the brazen hypocrisy here of certain people trying to supposedly stand for the court when in fact they also stand with the president, a former president who was directly attacking the Supreme Court back in the day, including the former Chief Justice. I mean, remember the whole co-warranto drama and all of that. So I see a lot of brazen hypocrisy there. But, one thing I want to emphasize here, as columnists, as journalists, as, public educators, the principle of verbi legis, right? The idea that, it is not the monopoly of constitutional law experts to discuss matters of national interest, matters of Supreme Court ruling. I think all of us, as long as you can understand basic English...
And it is public information.
It is public information.
Sino yung mga appointees ni Duterte.
Yes, exactly. And mentioning of facts, last time I checked, is not necessarily crime. Especially when you put a caveat. Especially when below that, I mean, you can check the tweet I shared with you.
Babalikan ko nga eh.
Yeah, it's very clear in the tweet, right?
Sinabi ni Richard Heydarian, fact, Duterte had appointed as many as 13 out of 15 Supreme Court justices by 2022. This reached 200,000 views. And then after that, on the same day, you said nevertheless...
No, it's under the same tweet, actually. Nevertheless, the decision was unanimous and would be unfair to automatically cast judgment just because of appointment patterns. And then I also said, check the Supreme Court site here, citing the tweet. And then this is also when I reached out to the Supreme Court and asked them if I could interview them, but it looks like they're still not open to open interview at this point in time. So that's why I was really surprised with this kind of thing. So is it legal harassment? Is it certain people trying to silence me? I remember back in the day, some of these good friends of ours are my fans, right? I remember there was a picture I had with a puppy, right? Like I was parked car and then the puppy was there and then they make it look like a reckless driving. It was just so ridiculous. So this is unfortunately not the first time I'm facing this kind of, let's just say, funny situation. But it is what it is. We're prepared to respond accordingly. But God willing, the Supreme Court, our highest court, whom we have a lot of respect, I'm sure they won't, we hope that they won't bother with this kind of frivolous petitions. And sana naman ang mga abogado also, when they file petitions and all, they don't do anything frivolous. They responsibly use this because the concern of some people is the weaponization of petitions to create a chilling effect.
That's
and some
correct.
of us, we have the privilege to have a legal team. I mean, there's so many lawyers from all across the country volunteering to support me. There have been statements of solidarity from different parties, civil society groups, and I'm extremely thankful for that. But imagine if you're an ordinary, more ordinary than us citizens, and you don't have those kinds of privileges.
Or resources to hire your legal team.
So imagine the chilling effect that could have if anyone out there who doesn't agree with you will try to petition you and threaten you with imprisonment or fines, etc. So I think this is also about something bigger.
So how will you respond to this? You have your own legal team now?
Yeah.
And what did they say?
I mean, we have all of the evidence there of my caveats, explanation, my inquiry, but then again, I think we'll only respond if we're asked by the Supreme Court.
Wala pa.
And we're hopeful that the Supreme Court will not even bother with this kind of frivolous petition.
Or not you, because the others medyo mas sharp yung kanilang commentary. For example, Larry Gadon said the SC was a tuta or a lapdog of the Dutertes. And
at naghamon din siya kay Topacio ng
singing competition. Oo. Si Congressman Percy Sandanya, ang sinabi naman niya, ano ba sinabi niya?
Cuddler?
Ayun, yun. Supreme cuddler of Sara Duterte. Well, anyway, they have their own cases to face, no? Okay, but speaking of this might be a trend that could create a chilling effect. How should we draw the line here in terms of commentary about the judiciary? And it was just, where do you personally draw the line in terms of helping them? I mean, in terms of contempt, allegations of contempt, right? Indirect contempt.
Well, I mean, any personal attack and naming out people like that and all, I think maybe you're crossing into certain lines. But I think we have to understand we're actually in an exceptional situation, right? I think this came as big surprise. This decision by the Supreme Court came as a big surprise to a lot of people. The fact that you have a former Chief Justice Panginiban, a number of different justices, whether Ascuna, whether Carpio, also expressing, disagreements with the merits of this decision. Looking at the highly polarized situation, emotions are being high. I think the democracy is also, important for us to sometimes understand that when emotions are high, maybe people will say things here and there, but it's important that we recognize that and then we recalibrate from there. And then also, we don't burn bridges. And I always said, we have to learn to agree to disagree. And this Supreme Court, composed of very respectable justices and all, they're more than capable of defending themselves and more than capable of standing their ground and explaining their side. Maybe I would have loved to interview the relevant folks at the Supreme Court para naman ma-explain din nila sa taong bayan. Kasi 97 pages yan, right? It's maybe
have you read the whole thing?
I didn't read the whole thing, but I read as much as possible, at least yung mga relevant provisions and all of that. Ako naman sana, for me, one thing I noticed in other democracies, mature democracies like the United States, ang daling intindihan yung sa kanilang saligang batas, ang daling intindihan yung English nila. Sometimes in the Philippines, the language is a little bit technical. So, to be honest, even as a journalist, someone who's supposedly proficient in the language, I've had to ask help from not only lawyers per se, but constitutional law experts to break it down. So, for me, this is also about communicating things further, siguro simplifying it. I mean, that's why I do my own vlogs, to simplify more complicated international issues. Someone said no one reads my books, but last time I checked, no one reads that newspaper or whatever it is. But, my book, for instance, on President Rodrigo Duterte, The Rise of Duterte, right, back in the day. Yes. President Duterte has a copy of that. And last time I checked, he has a triple-digit citation on Google Scholar. So I don't know about some friends who are not very appreciative of our scholarly work. But I try my best to, for instance, simplify my works. I had works with Harvard Law School. I had works with Sydney Law School, with different schools on populism, rule of law, and I try to simplify them in my vlogs and tweets and all of that. But having said that, I think the challenge also for some of us, especially people like me who are kind of in different worlds at the same time, kind of in journalism, kind of in academies, we also have to make sure that we find that Goldilocks level of communication whereby while it's engaging, it doesn't get a little bit overboard, right? So that's why, in fact, you will see as emotional and sometimes as pugnacious as I may seem, I also try to put caveats and reach out and put different kinds of contextual addendum and analysis there.
Hence the next tweet to the main tweet, right?
Yeah, and of course, there are columns. I mean, people forget, I don't do one thing. I do everything, right? I don't only write books that certain people are not into reading, but I also do vlogs every day. I write columns every week, not only for the major newspapers here, but also abroad. I do this, interviews, everything like that. So it's a whole body of work that I bring into picture. Yeah.
I'm going to move away to another topic. I don't want to get you in trouble.
Thank God. Yeah, exactly. Like I have my legal team are messaging me, you're talking too much. You might get yourself...
Okay. Punta natin yung SONA. Nandun ka.
Yes.
How was it? How was the experience like? What were your observations?
Right. I mean, throughout the years, I've observed SONA in different capacities. First, as a very humble staff in the Congress. This is during the Pinoy's time. And then, of course, as a resident analyst for the other two big networks. During Digong's time, that was quite challenging. This one was interesting because I felt it was not only an echo of Pinoy, yung 95% at least Filipino language, yung statesman-like and all. I thought it was even more like Bam Aquino. You know what I'm saying? I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the argument of progressives like Bam Aquino, is that, okay, there are all of these contentious, polarizing issues we can discuss. Pero unahin muna natin yung mga gut issues, mga issues na malapit sa puso at puso't ng tao, no? And if you look at the speech of the president, it was like almost entirely about education, and then food security and healthcare, right? So the president was stealing thunder maybe from Malasakit of Bongo, but at the same time, I could see, you know, because I was watching actually Bam and Kiko very much. Like, what would be? They seem to be like, like I think they were feeling it. Especially Bam. I mean, he was sticking out his head and listening. And I think in his own interviews afterwards, he seemed to have been appreciative enough about what the president was doing. So, yes, the president did not address the contentious issue, whether this is the Supreme Court ruling, whether it's the impeachment, ICC issues, our impeachment, even West Philippine Sea, he didn't mention, because I think the strategy there was to say, i-freeze muna natin mga contentious political issues. Focus muna tayo dun sa mga basic needs ng ating mga kababayan.
And
from there, we can build my legacy in the next 3 years.
From what this administration has been communicating. Actually, baka hindi naman nila kasalanan, but also the media cycles around this administration have been centered on the more political issues and the divide. But were you satisfied with what you heard in terms of the social services, in terms of the gut issues? Some would say there were not enough results. I mean, we're in the midterm of his administration, right?
If you look at the opening lines of the president, was an admission, di ba? Sabi niya, naririnig ko kayo na hindi kayo natutuwa sa performance natin, kaya nga medyo underperformance, kumbaga, yung nangyari sa midterms dun sa alyansa, di ba? So I think the president humbly accepted that nagkakulang sila. And that's why he's saying, magda-double time na ako in my next 3 years. For me, what was interesting also is that, the president, marami siyang cadence. I mean, there was the usual BBM, just, a bit boring, I would say, grocery list. But there was also this funny BBM. He suddenly talks about our athletes, people's champ, this and that, and then suddenly, and our new boxing champion. Yeah, the man of the hour, who was also on this show, the other month. So, he was able to switch in between different kind of cadence and all, and I think, but he ended on quite a strong note. Yung maya naman kayo, di ba? Yung na-real talk niya, yung flood control projects talaga.
Correct.
What we want sana is hindi lang monitoring, sana may criminal liabilities kung talaga meron na proof na talaga may kalokohan na nangyari dyan, because it's a matter of life and death. If the flood control projects are really faulty and fakey, right? People are gonna die, right? And people may have already died because of that. So I want to hear more from the Department of Justice, from other relevant agencies. So kumbaga, marching order yung SONA eh. Hindi naman yan ang buong blueprint eh. So what I want to see is from relevant agencies, give us details on things that the President mentioned. And I think the fact that the President talked a lot about education and all was kind of a subtle dig at former Education Secretary Sara Duterte to say, ngayon na may bago tayo, may maayos tayo na Secretary of Education, magkakaroon tayo ng tunay na pagbabago.
Hey Richard, we don't have a lot of time. Just one final question. I had Guido David and Cleve Arguelles here, and we somehow, in the analysis, parang it seemed the president was moving away from yung more contentious issues, being very careful and calculated with the Duterte base. Impeachment, ICC not discussed. Pero parang mas tinirapan niya yung mga kaalyado niya. I mean, with budget issues, for example, the House Speaker being embroiled in this. Where do we find House Marcos now?
Well, I don't know about Marcos, but it's like when you say House of Marcos, like which Marcos, which branch we're talking
about? The Speaker, I guess. Toby Chanco not voting for the Speaker.
No, my point is, the president has to accept that there's a certain section of society, let's just call them core Duterte supporters. Sunog na yan. He's never going to win them over. In fact, if anything, they're completely on the other side.
So why was he careful if he's never going to win
them over? So I think
over?
The best he can do is to win over progressives, non-partisan Filipinos who are concerned about corruption, about transparency, about accountability, and siguro by a little bit making some of his allies punching bag, he's trying to win over those people. Because anyway, you have to stick with me and you need me for the next 3 years, but those other guys, I need to win them over. Maybe I cannot give them what they want on ICC or on Sara impeachment issues. I'll try to keep away from those issues, but I'll give them other things, accountability, anti-corruption. Kaya, di ba, ang dami nag-post about Pinoy na parang this sounded like a very anti-corruption reformist speech. Ironically, right? I mean, some would say from a Marcos, right? But I feel that was the subtle strategy of winning over. Kasi nakita ko maraming pumapalakpak. Some of them were civil society leaders who were not necessarily either DDS or loyalists or with the administration, but they were happy enough with it. So I think that was a subtle strategy to win over the neither Duterte nor Marcos-based people who are just sick and tired of corruption and anomalies and these fakey flood control projects.
Nakita mo ba yung nag-iisabong?
Yung isang actually I was ang dami kong tinitignan doon sa baba ano yung mga pinagagawa nila so echosera ako
Okay,
zoom lang
maraming salamat sa iyo Richard Heydarian. We hope we did not get you in trouble this morning, but thank you so much for explaining your side here on Morning Matters as we
and thank you for giving me an opportunity.
We probably should get the other side here.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.